Welcome to This Magical Life, where through heartfelt conversations, soul-lifting meditations, and inspiring stories, we explore what it means to live a life that truly nourishes the heart and soul.
So here we are in the sitting room with Samantha Moyo.
Hello, everyone.
And there's us two, and there's this iPad over there. But behind the iPad are lots and lots of people.
Yes.
And that's what somehow we have to balance this thing of wanting to have a talk like this,
Yeah.
but not wanting to exclude the fact that we're actually with everybody else. And so let's just do whatever we can to incorporate a feeling of everyone. I always love that feeling of being with, having a conversation with people.
Yes. And thank you for inviting me on your show because I'm such a big fan.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a big fan of you.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and you have completely derailed my afternoon. I have to say. Do you know why?
Why?
Because you sent me your book at around lunchtime.
Oh, I am sorry. That's very Samantha Moyo, I must say.
You sent me your book, and I thought I'll just have a peep. And 2 hours later, I was thinking, gosh, I wonder if I can finish this. I was steaming through it, thinking, God, this is fantastic. I love it.
Oh my
And
goodness.
no, it's really tremendous, Sam.
Really?
And I love it.
Okay.
It's called Tapestry of Magic, a handbook for life outside the mainstream. And there it is, and it's just come out.
Yes, so it's coming out on the 21st of March, equinox. I really wanted to work with the cycles as always.
Yes.
But I've been writing it for 2.5 years, and I must say I feel really vulnerable, but also excited. And it feels a little bit like a coming out story. Yeah.
It is, because you're very frank, you're very open, you're very exuberant and helpful. That the energy that comes across to me in this book is of you're really, you talk about how you're writing it to your children of the future would be one way, and it's full of love and it's one of those books that gives you permission. When I read it, I find myself going, yes, it's giving me permission to live my biggest life, my wildest dreams.
That means a lot to hear from you, someone who already lives like that. But yeah, one of the things with writing this was freeing myself, allowing myself to express like my raw, authentic self, but also inspire the children of the future to please just like listen to your intuition, like embrace your weird and wonderful sides. And even actually after I'd written it, so so I'm dyslexic and neurodiverse, involving you guys in this. And, I've self-published as well because I didn't want it on Amazon. That's a whole other
Good for you.
story.
Yeah.
I had a team of editors who are all friends, and everyone was like, Sam, there's so many spelling mistakes here. We've got to sort it out. And I said, please, can we leave some spelling mistakes? And please don't correct all the grammatical errors, because part of it is like showing our imperfections and celebrating it. So yeah, I'm glad you got that.
Yes, and there aren't that many spelling mistakes.
Okay,
You do
great.
the classic thing that everybody under the age of 40 does, which is you talk about bored of instead of bored with.
Oh, great. Yay. Oh, good.
And I remembered, when I got your email and you sent me the thing and there was a little blurb and it said bored of. And I was just starting to type, hey, Sam, that's great, but by the way, it's bored with, not bored. And then a little voice inside said, oh, you're not a schoolmaster. It's like you don't have to tell her that. So I didn't.
But if you had told me that, I would have actually corrected it. And now I'm going to be thinking, bored with. Oh, yeah, we haven't explained to everyone. So the way the book's described is it's a self-help book for anyone bored of self-help books. But remember, read it as bored with self-help books. Yeah.
Yeah, and it breaks the genre and it's lovely. And maybe we should share with the viewers and listeners how we met, because that was quite powerful, I think, for me.
Yeah, ditto.
Yeah, it was. it was at the sauna, in the sauna space, coming out of the sauna space at the medicine festival, wasn't it?
Because I'd seen you talk the day before,
Uh-huh.
and you were talking about ancestry. You're on a panel, and I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and that's where I grew up. And one of my things, because I've now lived here for more years than I lived in Zimbabwe, so 15 years there, about 20 something years here. And so one of the things with my journey has been, like, I've done so much, like, connecting with the land of Africa, you know, going to spend time with indigenous communities in Namibia, going back to South Africa and Zimbabwe frequently. But what I haven't done is really connect with this land and the wisdom of this land. And I feel finally somehow ready to. And so meeting you and, like, watching this panel of wisdom keepers of this land, pre-colonial times, for me was just very moving. And it was almost like it opened up a way for me to maybe feel like, actually, this is my home too, and I belong here, and it's got similarities to where I'm from. So meeting you was just, please, can I keep you? Basically.
Well, but are you able to share the other story about your own ancestry?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is the caveat, and I don't share this very often, but I found out later in my upbringing that I was a quarter Scottish, and that my surname Moyo, I'm Samantha Moyo. Moyo means heart, soul, and mojo in a lot of African languages. Your Moyo is your spirit, you know.
Yeah.
And so my surname Moyo is actually my step-grandfather's surname. And actually, my dad was conceived by my grandmother and someone who was mixed race with Scottish heritage. So there's a part of me that is of this land as well. And I honestly, and so my real surname would be Steele, Steele. A few years ago, I found my Scottish tartan, so I have that. I just haven't known how to begin the journey of discovering this part of myself and connecting with the land and the stories, and then how that comes together with my Zulu Xhosa, because my mum's South African, and my Shona and Ndebele, which is Zimbabwean, my dad's side as well. So yeah, I'm interested in this land, in this wisdom, and actually starting to know a bit more, because I don't have my grandpa and that lineage around to share anything.
Isn't it interesting how we have to sort of, I think that we have to hold a kind of dual position in relationship to blood and ancestry. On the one hand, to feel proud of it and to sense it as a sort of source of inspiration and even teaching for us and so on, an identity. And yet also to recognize that we're all children of the divine, and we're all aspects of the one, and that racism has been such a kind of scourge of humanity, and that we need to go beyond identifications with simply blood, as it were.
The milk line, when you told me about the milk line and what a milk line was, that was also something that helped shift things for me. Because I'm a person who was brought up by many different people, not just my parents.
Right.
And so actually, when I think about who I am and how I became, it's not just to do with my ancestors, it's to do with my stepmother, for example, who I actually ended up asking to, thanks to the whole milk line thing. I was like, oh my goodness, I've got to honor those people as well. So my stepmother's written the foreword for the book.
Yeah.
You know, she lives in Ghana. I had people who basically raised me instead of my parents. So I'm now like, oh my goodness, I'm wanting to get to know their history a little bit more, how they became, because they are people who influenced me. So yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people what a milk line
About the
is?
milk line in case you don't know of
Yeah.
it? Yes, in the sort of in the old days, wet nursing was very common, and all over the world, actually. And within the sort of Celtic lands, what we now think of as the Celtic lands, there was this concept of the milk line, which is honoring your those who have nourished you. Starting off from originally the wet nurse, but broadening it out to so that now the way we understand, we work with it in modern Druidry, for instance, is that you sense whoever has nourished you, whether that be spiritual teachers, significant others. When I went to school, each of the schools I went to, there was kind of one or two really amazing teachers who helped me to grow and change and all the rest of it. And so they become part of your lineage. So my Druid teacher, Newen, for instance, is in my milk line, even though he's not genetically related to me. And that's an incredibly empowering and liberating idea, particularly for people who don't know what their bloodline is, or perhaps has real problems with them because of issues that occurred with them in their childhood and so on. So it's a really empowering idea.
Yeah, I found it very empowering, especially because I am that annoying person who still gets in touch with my headmaster from school, Mr. Durrant, and it's like, hi, Mr. Durrant, how are you doing? And he's like, oh, it's you again. And I'm like, send me photos. He's like, I'm a bit tired, you know. And I'm like, go on, send me some photos. I still keep in touch with my high school teachers from here, Zimbabwe. I've just always been that person who appreciates these people who've just nurtured me along the way, you know?
That's lovely. And that's exactly it. That's, you know, and what I love about these kind of teachings is when you hear about them, they're sort of, they just feel right. And they're kind of natural. They don't belong to any one tradition. The idea of the milk line and the bloodline, for instance, it's kind of obvious at one level. It's just that nobody's really articulated it clearly before, perhaps. So that's really good. And I got about halfway through your book this afternoon, and I highlighted lots of excerpts. That's always a good sign. If you find yourself highlighting lots of excerpts in a book, it's really speaking to you. I'm just going to read a few quotes out that I love and that I highlighted. Okay. As a multi-faith minister / lesbian nun who loves dancing and shagging, my dream is to inspire reclamation. For many hundreds of years, humans relied on intuition, the winds and the stars to guide us. So take or leave what you want. Okay.
I love that. The whole lesbian nun bit who loves dancing and shagging is because I actually don't get very much action. Hence I'm a self-identifying nun. Yeah.
You're a reluctant nun.
I'm a very reluctant nun who's not doing it by choice.
Probably a lot of them are reluctant. That's probably a lot of nuns, actually.
Should probably have a little sharing circle. Might meet the love of my life there. Fine.
There's probably a lot of mileage in that. The reluctant nun sharing circle. I turned on, what's that extraordinary thing? People who get married without ever having seen each other. There's this reality TV thing where they get people and they just sort of run them through tests and all the rest of it, and they match people and then they get married.
Oh my goodness.
So, and the first time they meet is in the ceremony.
And how does that go? How long do they last? Well,
that's the point of the series. You know, you watch. Okay, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. If you need a bit of sort of, I don't say junk TV, but if you need some sort of easy watching, it's quite extraordinary. Why did I mention that? Because I've only actually seen it once, a couple of nights ago. And there were about a dozen women in their 30s, and they all were saying, you know, they're reluctant nuns, and they're saying, you know, I haven't had a boyfriend for ages, or I've never been in love, or you know, if this is make it or break it, if this marriage doesn't work.
So oddly, in the book, there's a section on this whole love of your life thing. And as you know, the book's dedicated to the nuns who love shagging and dancing. And I think that there's something with our generation where actually, because we're in this Aquarian age and everything, we've had to spend a bit more time getting to know ourselves, wake up, do a lot of inner work. And potentially the way we found pleasure and connection, I feel, is different to the 1950s. What's been sold to us, the like get married, have kids, all of that. I feel like, for me, example, even this book being dedicated, written to the children of my future, I don't know if I'm going to have children, but I do still consider myself a mother because it's about mothering the earth, being a steward.
That lovely parental love that one feels for all of life
Yeah.
in some way.
Yeah. And it's not that I don't want to meet someone and do the whole, intimacy, relationship, marriage thing, but I just feel like this life we're living is just so much more in terms of, like pleasure, fulfillment, enrichment, family, constellations. I just feel like it's a wider.
A much wider frame. I'll tell you, I mean, for me, the last few years has been very interesting because of the work that I've been invited to do that I hadn't planned at all. But I found myself in this world of psychedelic therapy and so on. And so I've, at the age of 73 now, I'm interacting with lots of people in their 30s and 40s. So it's sort of, the other
Yes.
as well as, I mean, my kids are that age too.
Yeah.
And one of the things that strike me is their maturity, their kind of, but it's as if I feel I had to, and I think people of my generation, we had to wade through decades of reading spiritual texts, trying things, of sort of sorting the wheat from the chaff. And you guys have arrived and you seem to have access to it. I don't know whether our previous generations have done the work or whether it's a question of a sort of acceleration of human consciousness collectively. But people of your generation seem kind of switched on and seem to have got it, is one way. Do you think that's, or am I seeing that through a very particular lens just because of the people I've met?
I feel like there has been an acceleration, especially in the last sort of like 5-10 years, and especially like post-COVID with all the introspection and time we had, and a lot of us like realizing there was more to life than just our careers. So I think there's been a deep dive by our generation, and also the rise of like YouTube videos and all these podcasts as well. We just have more access to this information, whereas I think post the witches being burnt and colonialism, it was all tucked away.
Now I'm seeing kind of YouTube clips of, I mean, women who look 16, but they're probably not. They're probably, I don't know, 20, 25, sort of doing stuff that sort of Anthony Robbins, the sort of self-help guru, was doing, talking about sort of motivate, they're in their bedrooms or something like that. They've got sort of 1 million hits on YouTube or something like that. It's extraordinary, isn't it? But it's
definitely more part of our DNA and language, I feel. And actually now, like my mum, I had this conversation with my mum, and it was like, she was coming down to visit, and I was like, Mum, lower your expectations on like what we're going to get up to. She was like, I really see you as my spiritual teacher. And I was like, who's teaching my mum this language? And now she's talking about manifesting and everything. And when I was asking her, she's like, no, I've been learning all of this from you,
Right.
So I think our generation, it's like in our language to use words like magic, and we're the generation that we're hugging at school.
And just being psychologically literate, just know concepts like self-esteem and confidence and all the rest of it, which, in my generation, it's like, no, people didn't talk about that. So that's fantastic. But it brings with it, though, or does it bring with it some kind of burden?
I feel, and I think hence the self-help book for anyone bored of self-help book. I felt like there was a lot of pressure maybe that I put on myself to become enlightened and woke. And I'm in a much better space now where I'm realizing that being enlightened and woke isn't about perfectionism. It's actually about accepting the ups and downs of life, the messiness, and it's just not this big glowing highlight that I think we were all kind of chasing. And that feels good as well, especially with all the things going on with the world. It's like understanding that, okay, our world's like, as much as we're visioning this new age, this new way of being, this new world, there's a chance that things that we're not so into are also going to be happening in parallel. And I feel that a lot of all this work that we're doing is about holding both. So holding the light and the dark externally and internally. And that's where I'm kind of getting to. It's just like, yeah, before when I started, I thought it was going to be like joy all the time and happiness and all of that. And actually, it's like, oh, sometimes some days are boring. And yeah,
Absolutely. And also, I think, we are in troubling times with all the things that we see going on in the world, and in Ukraine, in America, in Sudan, in you name it, everywhere,
yeah,
and
Congo.
a lot of suffering and difficulty.
Yeah.
And yet, there's also the most amazing initiatives, the most incredible people. I mean, you talk in your book about how you seem to have some knack of bumping into or meeting amazing people. And it's almost like the law of resonance, isn't it? I find myself meeting amazing people all the time. It's just extraordinary. I mean, just this week, on Monday, a medicine woman from the Amazon came here and we had a lovely talk. And she was such a warm soul, lovely. And then 2 days later, I was with two Hindu friends who came over who wanted to talk, who'd come over from India, and they were speaking, and you're here. And as you know, there are all sorts of incredible people doing incredible things. When you left Zimbabwe, there's so many things we could talk about because the
Yes.
book is full of these wonderful, I love the story.
I'm going to have to deal with all the things that I've written in this book, sharing my life. But basically, I'd gone to Bali, and it was after I'd sold Morning Gloryville. And honestly, I was so tired. I was tired after building a movement for like 4 or 5 years, and all the press and all the
We'll
noise.
talk about that after this story.
I was so shattered. No one will ever know how bringing joy to the world
It's so exhausting.
is so exhausting. And I went to Bali to heal, and honestly, it was like, so remember when I started Morning Gloryville, it was the first time I'd sobered up, right? I'd been partying all throughout from the age of like 16, 17, all through my 20s, and then started this thing that became a global
Which we've got to talk about now.
which we will.
Yes. Well, let's talk about it now because I think to give it context.
Okay.
Morning Glory, you'd been partying for 10 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you had this brilliant idea, which was to
Start an early morning sober rave at 6 a.m. on Wednesdays. And yeah, it was me and a friend. And yeah, our first event was at Village Underground in London, a 700 capacity club. Only 26 people turned up. I always shared the story in case anyone's starting something and you're like, why is this taking so long to get off the ground? It always does. So only 26 people at the first party. But then after that, like literally like 400 people were coming, then 800 people are coming. Then suddenly people were flying from all over the world to rave their way into the day.
rave their way into the day, turning up at a venue at 6 a.m. on
a
Wednesday, sober, so that they could then have a good old dance for a few
Full
hours.
on rave. We had
Full on.
like massive DJs like Basement Jaxx, Fatboy Slim, Rob the Bank. We had all these incredible artists coming, and people would come, get all fancy dressed up. We had superfood smoothies. There were theatrics and all that. And we would just dance, sweat, sweat, sweat. And everyone would just go to work feeling amazing. And it took the world by storm. Next thing we knew, we're in 23 cities around the world. And it was the first time I sobered up,
You sobered up for that.
Yeah.
And how long did you run that for?
So it's like 4 or 5 years, and then sold it, exited, then went to Bali, and I was shattered. It wasn't the most sexiest exit. So it wasn't like a big, like multi-million-pound exits as you have. So that was hard as well. And when I went to Bali, I was like, opening my heart and doing all this work. But what I didn't realize is I was also unraveling. Like I was actually, for the first time, not just still sober and things, but it was the first time I was feeling my feelings. And experiencing the things I'd pushed down from my alcohol and drug taking years. Because obviously Morning Gloryville, that was great, and that journey, but I was always busy, right? So I didn't have any time to start listening
To your heart. And
and realizing. And so whilst I was in Bali, I had this very scary, actually, experience. I'd never had it before. I'm quite a sensitive person where I was in a workshop doing some like healing work of some sort, and I started experiencing things that had happened to me when I was younger in my childhood. And it was the first time I'd had any sort of shamanic experience, so to speak. And I said to some friends, I think I need to go to a hospital of some sort, because
Yeah, because you were really...
I was like, I feel like I need to go to like a mental hospital or something. And yeah, that was hard. So I went, some friends took me. I sort of ended up being put in the wrong place. And yeah, because what was so interesting, and what's so interesting about the mind, is how quickly it can come back as well. And I think that's the first time I realized that. So as soon as I'd sort of, I think the freaking out made it worse, but then as soon as I recentered and I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. Get your friends to come visit. So, came, sister and everything, and then managed to move me into, a better environment. And then within 5 days of me like doing like full on yoga, and this is it. This is really, honestly, it was also one of the first times I learned the power of the human spirit, but also the power of all these things that we learned. Like, it was really like waking up, like doing meditation, doing some yoga, doing something, literally everything I'd learned that overrode the medication that they were giving me. And then gave me the strength to prove that I was actually fine to leave. And I just thought that was fascinating. And then after I got out, I literally just did like Kundalini yoga with a teacher every single day. And again, it was almost like I'd come out and then upgraded.
Right.
So
Yes.
I often say to people, when you're going through your worst and these things happen, like if you can just look at it from a sort of spiritual awakening space, but also engage in all those things that you've learned. I remember one of my clients I was working with, he was like, you've actually come out. How is this? You're actually better than you were before, So that's the experience I talk about. Although I do need to check what I did right, because I've forgotten a lot of the book, because it's like the process of writing this book was very much stream of consciousness.
It has that energy in it, which is great. It carries you along on a current. That was my experience of reading the book. I mean, this afternoon, is that, and if you hadn't turned up for us to make this interview, I would have carried on reading it through till the evening. So that's, for a writer, I think that's half the battle, isn't it? You want people to pick up your book and to keep reading. You don't want them to put I'll read that later. You want them to be drawn in and to,
Honestly, like, if you have picked up this book and wanted to carry on reading it, that means the world to me, because as a first-time author, writer, it's like if one person can get something out of it, that's more than enough.
Exactly. Let me read another bit. Whatever vision you have for the world, naked breathwork, mushroom hammock healing, aerial sock fight wrestling, which you've got involved in, bring it to life. The world needs creativity, playfulness, and as much ridiculous beauty to match the devastating political system or cycle that messes with Schumann's resonance. Isn't that interesting, the way Sam here brings in all this kind of encouraging? There's a writer called Sarg who sort of writes things like, eat mangoes naked, just like do what's in your heart and mind and body, and don't feel inhibited. And I think it's always helpful to encourage people, because we're oppressed not only by outside political and economic situations, but we're sort of oppressed by our own shoulds and musts, and you can't do that, you can't think that, that's a bit naughty, I shouldn't say that, that's embarrassing, that makes me feel a bit of a twat, all those endless thoughts that mess with, and you're somebody who is encouraging us to just drop all that.
And encouraging myself.
And encouraging yourself, because one of the things about writers is that, we're doing it for ourselves as well.
Literally, self-therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
So Schumann's resonance is the vibration, the resonance of the frequency at which the earth beats, basically. So aligning with Schumann's resonance or tuning into that is basically saying to tune in with the vibration, the frequency of our earth, of Gaia.
I've got to the bit where you end up being close to the Pope. You have
Oh
this lovely story. It's a great story.
Oh my God.
Where Sam just keeps getting this message saying, you've got to meet the Pope, and because you're not into sort of Catholicism particularly, it didn't kind of mean much to you. So you kept kind of pushing the thought away. And then you end up being a meter away from him in a kind of, I won't spoil the story. You have to read the book. I won't spoil the story.
That was one of the most, it was probably one of the most random callings I've ever had. I'm also not wanting to spoil the story, but we'll share a little bit. But I had been meditating and just got this message to go see the Pope. And it's so weird when a calling comes to you to do something. Have you had a calling?
Yes.
That's like, I'm sure you have, but something that you really don't expect. And you're like, why does this keep coming through?
Yeah.
And because it kept coming through so many times, I was like, fine, I'll email the Pope. And as if, I'll just email the Pope. So I then emailed the Pope.
He didn't answer.
And they didn't answer, obviously.
Yes.
But anyway, I decided to listen to the calling and got in touch with a friend who lived in Rome and said, listen, I've had this calling. Will you take me? And he said, Bafankulo, Sam, why? Why do we have to do this? And I said, please, just for me. Anyway, we ended up going to the Vatican City. And I will always remember this day because it was just a bit nuts. We got there and there were all these other religious leaders, like from all over. It was like...
It was a kind of he'd ordered a multi-faith gathering.
It was all...
And it's like you'd share, they'd just forgotten to post the invitation to you.
I didn't get an invitation, so I get crashed. Yeah. But what was amazing was that it is hard to get in the Vatican.
But you managed to get in.
But I did manage to get in, and because I was just really honest that I'd had this calling and I felt I should be part of the gathering. And so they let me in, and then just happened to not be so far away from...
Well, you finished the story here by saying it felt surreal and natural. That's a lovely thing, just that. I often find myself in really surreal situations, but it feels completely natural and kind of normal.
Yeah.
And I can go to one part of my head, as it were, that this is really surreal. And then another part is that this is natural. So it felt surreal and natural. And of all the seats we got, we managed to find ourselves only a meter from Pope Francis. The man does emit a holy rock star energy. It's difficult not to be wowed. Not only is his bling so bling, but all those decades of prayer and celibacy seem to do wonders for his skin. Obviously,
who wrote this?
Yeah, who wrote this? And actually, he seemed like a decent guy. Giving it beans at work.
Giving it beans at work, like doing a great job. It's giving it beans.
Giving it beans. Do you know, I've had to use the dictionary in reading your book.
Oh, right,
like
great.
smize. I didn't know what smize meant.
Oh, yeah.
I had to look up a few things, like smizing. Do you know what smizing is? Dear listener or
with
viewer?
With the eyes.
Smiling with the eyes, yeah. And then you finished. We prayed for love. And Pope Francis did something really lovely, actually. He said, look, normally I say a prayer, but because you're all from different faiths, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to suggest we sit in silence together and we all pray. And presumably, how many people were there?
It was like lots. It was like
500
500 or something. But what was so interesting was that, me and my friend had ended up there, but you could feel that this silent prayer was like we were all praying for the same thing. The energy was just everyone was praying for peace and, world peace and happiness. And there was this sense of harmony.
And you set up it's that field of consciousness, isn't it? I mean, that's what I find in Tea with a Druid. There's usually about 300 people or something like that, but from around the world. And then by the time it's viewed by other people, it goes up into the thousands. But live at the time, it's about 300 to 500, say.
Interesting.
And you can feel this, or I and other people say that as well. You can feel this field of peace and harmony and love, connecting everybody together.
I think coming back also to that story actually about the calling, I feel like it's so interesting how when you are open, something calls you, you don't understand why. You listen to the calling and then you go there and then you have this magical experience. So part of me sharing that is just to inspire people to listen to even the things you don't understand that are coming through, obviously checking, but also there's an inquiry in that chapter of how do we know when it's a calling? How do we know when it's something from the heart and from good spirits, so to speak? And I think learning to decipher that, all of us, is day-to-day work, basically.
Exactly. Yes.
I listened to that because it happened. It was something that came through multiple times, I think, and I couldn't shake it off.
You couldn't shake it off. It kept coming back to you. And what do you hope for?
I hope for a sense of sustained happiness.
Yes. Is that for yourself? Yes. Because do you find that it comes and goes and you'd like it to stay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like a sort of groundedness, a consistent groundedness.
Yes.
In this world that doesn't always make sense.
Yes. And that's because, do you find yourself sometimes feeling ungrounded?
Not always knowing how to hold the different energies and feelings.
Because one of the things that, if I can share this with you, that strikes me about you is you have this capacity to be very high energy, very giving and loving and inspiring and kind of wild and crazy, which because that's part of your creative self, and that's a real gift. And then, but you're also very sensitive, and therefore, I think I sense that life can sometimes be difficult for you, and that's. So for instance, when you read the book, I think you start at somewhere you talk about being full on. I can't remember where, or is it, I don't know, somewhere in the book, and one might be forgiven from just reading the book without meeting you, thinking, wow, she's kind of full on all the time. And then, you lie down in bed and you switch off, go to sleep or don't go to sleep. And then you're up in the morning, because that's not your life, is it?
No, like I'm a person, a lot of people when they get to know me always say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that you were so soft. Or
yes, and you were saying before we started,
Yeah.
with the lights and everything, you were saying, oh, I'm actually really quite shy.
I'm very vulnerable and shy,
yeah.
and I might put myself on stages or end up in front of cameras and things, but I often feel vulnerable and nervous, and that's the part of me. I feel like I sometimes come across more intense, but I don't know how to be super excited and enthused about something and be soft at the same time.
I think you can. I think you're doing it now.
Oh,
I mean,
okay, great.
yeah, you're doing it now. I think it's partly the sort of pressures of, being in the public eye, as it were, and needing to, or feeling that one has to, you do short form videos and Instagrams and all the rest of it. This is why I wanted to do this Magical Life podcast, which is longer than Tea with a Druid, because then we have a chance to show more of ourselves, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that. I think with me as well, it's like I actually, it took me a long time to understand, again, talking about the story. So from my teens through to my 20s, partying, raving, and then sobering up with the sober rave movement.
Yes.
And then suddenly after that starting to realize who I actually am. And who I am is on Monday is my birthday, and I'm getting messages from friends being like, let's do this. And I'm like, actually, honestly, I'm not I'm not sad, I'm not down, but all I want to do is go to Seven Sisters on my own and just walk and be in the elements. And do you know what I mean? And that's actually, yeah, I'm just learning that those are my interests: silence, nature, wild swimming,
being in touch with the elements. You talk about wild swimming in the book, don't you? Yes. Yeah.
I love listening to the wind. At least one day a week, I just need my bed day, where it's just me in bed, reading, turned off.
Yeah.
And those moments are really, I think that's, precious, basically. Probably for anyone. Luxuries.
Fantastic. Do you know what I'm going to suggest now is that you read us
Philip.
from the book.
Why don't we read from the actual book?
There have been many cloaks that self-sabotage has played out for me. Sleeping with someone I'm not really that into. Staying in communities that actively work against the climate movement. Smoking cigarettes when I break up with someone. Packet of 20, bottle of Coca-Cola and takeout. Fuck the gym, self-care, juicing. Who wants any of that juice anyway? Staying in draining relationships and friendships. Overstepping my boundaries. Underselling my work. Being vague about what I do. And I know that one. Hiding down, playing. Saying yes when I mean no. Saying no instead of I'm curious but feel vulnerable. That's a really interesting one. Dilly-dallying with a decision when a maybe is always a no. Putting other people's needs ahead of mine. Repeating actions and behaviors that I know are not expansive. Wasting my time. Overthinking. Doom scrolling. Yeah, that's
doom scrolling. Do you know what? So it's Ramadan at the moment.
Yeah.
And for Ramadan, I did like a 3-day water fast. And then my actual fast has been coming off cigarettes, smoke, drinking, and not eating meat. But then actually I found that doom scrolling is probably more harmful to me. And that's probably my biggest addiction. So yeah, I feel like a lot of us are working through this, right?
I think doom scrolling, particularly in the light of present day sort of situations.
I just find myself just going and then picking it up and then suddenly then I'm like, why? I did not need to do it in that moment.
It's almost, I find, like if I'm writing and I've got the screen up and I reach a sort of point where I sort of just overdo it, there's a part of me that just wants to sort of check the news as if, and what are you doing that for? To get some little hit of adrenaline or just out of fear? Has something terrible happened that I need to know about?
But I think that when we have the awareness, which I have about doom scrolling, and I'll tell you now, when we have a awareness about something not being good for us, which I have, but then keep doing it, that's self-sabotage. So for me, like, that's why I needed to stop my end of day fag and all of that. But now doom scrolling is the next step.
The next thing to give up. That's right.
Totally.
Yes. Waking up to one's own self-sabotaging habits is akin to that moment you stop smoking weed after years of being high. When I stopped smoking weed in my 20s after being stoned for years, it was like cleaning the windscreen of a dirt road race car. Yeah.
It really was. I sweated for like 6 weeks, sorry. I didn't realize. Yeah, you don't realize, I think, when you're in something like doom scrolling.
In the first stage, you don't even know that you're addicted to something. You're doom scrolling. And then step 2 is you realize it, but that still doesn't necessarily change anything. You have to take the third step, which is to actually stop doing it.
Yeah. I must say, having my self-sabotage points being reread to me in front of whoever's watching and listening, I'm now like, okay, you are all my accountability buddies.
I think the big shift when I was a kid, I think that those of us who were searching for enlightenment thought, that it was a sort of a plateau that we would reach. And that if we worked hard enough, meditated long enough, read enough books, followed the right guru and so on, we would reach a stage where life would just be serene and we'd always
Yeah,
this awful smug person who was very enlightened.
yeah.
You then discover that life just ain't like that.
No.
And there are ups and downs and all sorts of challenges, and you're growing and changing all the time. And part of it is that acceptance of our vulnerability and our weaknesses and our sillinesses and our foibles and the stuff that we want to work on, and being honest about it, so that rather than thinking there's a sort of team of adepts, classic sort of Western occult magical tradition, there were these adepts who were sort of highly advanced beings, and now it's been replaced by the sort of Instagram self-help influencer who's always has a perfect life and all the rest of it. But actually, we all know that it's not like that. It's much more human and messy, but real. Then you go into a whole thing about astrology, which is a whole thing, and chakras at this point. And then I got to this kind of
the astrology bit is actually interesting. Sorry, it sometimes takes me a while for pennies to drop and process and come into a conversation. But that was interesting because I am someone who often looks at my, where are the stars? What does it mean? What does today's full moon mean, for example? And what does it mean for me being a Pisces Leo rising? And for a while, I think I didn't understand astrology properly. And so I was taking a lot of things verbatim. And then I read the autobiography of a yogi. And I thought
George Harrison's favorite book.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very interesting perspective. And it's not that there's one right or wrong, but in that it was like about how you change the stars. So instead of being ruled by the stars, like we are part of co-creation with them. And so the way to do that apparently is by doing all this inner work, because all our chakras resemble the zodiac,
right, linked to the stars,
to the stars. So it's like everything in the stars is in our bodies as well. So you do all this work to grow, to shed, to change your karma, and through that you're actually changing the stars and your destiny,
because it's reciprocal. Tip is reciprocal,
and you're working together rather than, oh, this is what my horoscope says today, therefore.
It's like taking the concept of relationality, this business that, that we're all in relationship and that everything is context and relationship. And then, we say, how can I possibly have a relationship with the President of the United States? But actually, there is a relationship going on, even with the stars, the way I see it, even with the stars, which seem so far away and so sort of vast and so unlike us in every way imaginable. And yet the suggestion in that is that there is still a relationship. I remember once asking a professor of physiology about the relationship between the testosterone cycle and lunar phases, because it was for a book I was writing, and I found out this weird little piece of trivia that I found really interesting, which is that the owner of a chain of sex shops in Amsterdam had run his income through in comparison with a lunar chart, and he realized that on a full moon he should keep his shops open all through the night on the full moon, but on a dark moon he may as well just close the shops for a few days, because he saw this complete connection between the amount of money he was making from his mainly male clients. So then so I thought, well, that's kind of strange, and then looked at some research they'd done in Scandinavia with soldiers, because they were the only people they could find to do this experiment with, seeing how their libido varied according to the lunar cycles. So I emailed a friend who's a professor of physiology, and he came back with some data about a particular kind of crustacean, I've forgotten what kind it is, who mates when the Pleiades rise. And you think, God, I love that. It's like they're so far away. How did
they even work that out?
I know. It's fantastic.
Like, yeah. So I'm about to read a prayer for transitions. Angels, ancestors, transcestors. I do not know what lies ahead, and that's okay. I cannot see what's to come, and that's okay. What I do know is that you, beloved universe, completely have my back, holding my parts that feel wobbly. I do not know what lies ahead, but I know all will be well. All will be well, and all will be well, and every kind of thing will be well. Thank you.
You see, you can feel it, can't you? It's a lovely prayer. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And you've got lots of prayers in there. And you see how it's shifted the energy. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's lovely. One of your big messages is permissiveness. You combine a kind of sense of integrity, because it's all right being permissive to saying anything goes, but of course anything doesn't go, because there are certain things that are definitely not on, as it were. But to be permissive and allowing of anything that you need to express. I was going to say that is wholesome, but that immediately introduces some sort of value judgment in it. And you've introduced me to another new word, which I sent to my daughter. I told her, did you know, Sophie, that you are a multi-hyphenate?
Oh, yeah, multi-hyphenatism.
Yeah. How many people know that? Do you out there? Do you know what multi-hyphenatism means? It means, tell us.
It's a person who is a multi-hyphenate. So I am Sam, the celebrant, speaker, creative entrepreneur, artist, community builder. Before it would be, what do you do? When someone says what do you do? You can say, I'm a multi-hyphenate.
Right.
Or I'm multi-passionate. And that's a solid enough response. And they can say, oh, what do you do within that? And you can say, well.
And within that field. That's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
It says,
it's actually it's like really relieving for people like us who do lots of things to have one answer response.
Yeah, because otherwise every time you're trying to sort of make a judgment. Shall I tell them I'm a writer, or shall I tell them I'm a psychologist? Whatever.
Yeah.
It's only in the last few years, you write, that multi-hyphenatism is celebrated and accepted, perhaps as it's unveiling in tandem with non-binary awareness. Today you can be a lawyer and a DJ, an accountant and an esteemed artist, an engineer and a contemporary dancer. We're in the middle of the Great Awakening, and hopefully by the time you're reading this, great grandkids' words like woo-woo have left the ether. Yes, hopefully by the time you're reading this, you're addressing the next generations to come here. Hopefully by the time you're reading this, the oil titans behind Shell are not being celebrated by governments, whilst seers, clairvoyants, medicine people and druids are blasphemed and in some countries put behind bars. And adjacent to this, hopefully whilst you're reading this, Big Pharma has lost its battle to hush the sacred human ear and our innate abilities to work and communicate with plants, flowers, roots, accessible, abundant remedies from the earth.
Yes, it's a prayer, actually.
It's
an actual prayer. Thank you for reading that out loud.
Yeah.
It's very meaningful that you're the first person to.
Well, thank you, Sam. So your book's coming out on the spring equinox.
Yeah.
And I hope it's a great success. And I'd encourage everybody to read it. It's really lovely. And maybe I just suddenly had this flash of you doing kind of readings from it with other stuff going on. I don't know, because you do, one of the things you do is you kind of put on things, don't you?
Yes, yeah. So today I saw my run of experiences happening this spring summer.
When you say you saw the run, do you mean you saw in your inner eye, or you saw it?
I love it. Yeah. Both. No, but me and a wonderful little team have been putting together events and experiences that I'll be doing this summer. I cannot share them right now, this instant.
They're all top secret.
Yeah, we're going to titrate all the information. But yes, there's going to be readings. There's going to be secret beach dances. There's going to be something with alternatives who I love.
In St. James's.
Yeah, St. James's in Piccadilly. And there'll be a few happenings at festivals, magical moments. So
magical moments.
Yeah.
That's lovely. I think I'm not exact. I think I got a flash of that when I said that. I sort of saw
Yes.
a performance happening with you reading bits out from the book or reciting bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
This
the
stuff.
whole thing with Tapestry of Magic and the way this book's going to be celebrated is I'm not going to come out with a launch. The book's going to come out and then I want people to read it. And then the experiences will begin really in September. And the experiences are very much me finding artists on their journey or people on their spiritual journey and platforming them so that they see themselves stepping into their spiritual leadership, stepping into their artistry, where it hasn't been seen before. And I will be asking you to come and,
Do a little something.
do a little something. You will be. I'm sorry. I'm saying it on camera.
That's very sweet of you.
Yeah.
So the book is Tapestry of Magic,
Yes.
a handbook book for life outside the mainstream. And your website's just your name, isn't it? .com.
It is SamanthaMoyo.com, but by the time when the book launches, it has its own website. So tapestryofmagic.com is where you will be able to get the book. And yes, see you there.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and thank you
Oh my
everybody for
goodness.
listening. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
That's all for this episode of This Magical Life. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe and share with friends.